episode of Life's Journeys. I'm your host, James Devine, and on this episode I have Dr. Sheldon Greaves, where we have a most important discussion about the social issues surrounding AI and how one can positively adapt to a world impacted by AI technology. It's a conversation not to be missed. And without any further delay, here's episode 6. Welcome everyone to Life's Journeys. Today I have on the podcast Dr. Sheldon Greaves, who has a PhD from the California University of Berkeley in Ancient Near Eastern Studies. Sheldon is from the USA. He works in the nonprofit sector promoting science literacy and education, helps start a private university, runs a company for publishing science education software, and has published a book titled The Guerrilla Scholar's Handbook, a guide to the pursuit of learning for pleasure. His objective, life's purpose, is to encourage communal and individual intellectual activity as a means for revitalizing our communities. Well, welcome, Sheldon, to Life's Journeys.
Thank you, James. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it is great to have you. We have a joy for, a love for learning.
Yeah.
I have an undergraduate degree from California State University, Sacramento. I'm a high school teacher of social science and mathematics, and
Oh,
both my fathers were teachers. I'm adopted, and
uh-huh.
I found my biological family and discovered my father was a teacher. He's
Hmm.
passed on now, and my adopted dad was an English teacher for over 30 years in Santa Rosa, California.
Wow.
We have
Very
something in
cool.
common, a
Hmm.
curiosity for learning.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's pretty clear at the outset.
Well, you graduated from Berkeley, a prestigious academic institution known for its successful programs in computer science and engineering. Also, a history of, for free speech movement and
Hmm.
for students speaking out. Is pursuing a university education worthwhile, and how would you describe the state of education today in general?
Um, to answer your first question, um, I think pursuing a university education is still worthwhile, but you might not be best served by pursuing it at a university. That's kind of why I wrote my book, because it's about doing serious intellectual work when you don't have access to a university or the resources of the university. As for the state of university education in the United States today, there are some problems, external and internal. External, frankly, university education is, I would say, under siege by forces that are demanding ideological compliance. There are laws. There are people who are actually using legislation to try to compel professors to teach certain things a certain way, or not say anything at all about certain things. Um, and there's the question of funding being denied and all sorts of things like that. The internal problems are that for the last several decades, universities have been run more and more like businesses. So we've reached the point where big universities like Stanford or Yale or Harvard are really little more than hedge funds with regional accreditation. And that's a problem because the purpose of a business is to make money. That's not the purpose of a university. And in that tension is where a lot of the motivation for going to a university, the purpose of it is getting lost. Now, it's still possible to get a good education at a university, but student debt is making that less and less of a even tenable question unless you have lots of money.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking is that the student debt issue. And I had a recent conversation with my younger son about that. And we both agreed that because he didn't go on to university, although he was very interested. It just his life, our life path just changed, and for
Hmm.
better. And
Hmm.
but we talked about the debt situation. He said, "Yes, Dad, that is one thing I don't. I'm glad I don't have."
Yeah. Yeah. And I was fortunate. I was one of the last cadres of students that could get through school without, having to hock my redundant kidney.
It seems to be off-putting to come away with such after such hard work, whether you did postgraduate or not,
Hmm.
and then have an $80,000 to $100,000 debt, depending on the school you go to, even
Hmm.
even at 25,000, what have you. It's still a big chunk to pay. However, the only thing I would say in positive in light of that is that if you are going to have any debt, that's the kind of debt I'd have
Uh-huh.
because I, as I told my young children long time ago that education to me or going on to university is enlightening. The people you will meet, the professors you will meet,
Hmm.
and it's worthwhile in that sense. However, your
Hmm.
point is, the financial side is a bit daunting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. And that's really unfortunate because I loved that experience at university. There are so many great things that happened to me there and things that I learned and things that I experienced that informed just about everything I've ever done. And I would have missed all that.
Yeah,
So,
it's a beautiful school as well. If I can just talk about the aesthetics, Berkeley
yeah,
across the
yeah.
bay in San Francisco, for people that don't know, is beautiful. I love it
Hmm.
there. I've visited there. I never attended there, but
Hmm.
yeah, I've always enjoyed not only for its academic prestige, that's one attracting thing, but also the location.
Yeah,
Sheldon,
it
it's
is.
moving on to the next question. You have a Substack titled Guerrilla Scholar,
Hmm.
where you explain your observations regarding the arts and the cosmos, science, and the human condition. What is
Hmm.
guerrilla scholarship, and can you give one example, please?
Yeah, so guerrilla scholarship, I mentioned before, is doing interesting or serious intellectual work without having access to a university. And what that means is that you have to replicate or at least approximate some of the things that a university scholar would have access to. So it involves being creative about finding research materials, um, developing a network, finding interesting problems to solve. Sometimes it involves finding funding for those problems, and finding a way to take your findings and make them available to other people. Now, in the course of doing that, what you hopefully will end up doing is creating a community of learners, whether it's just you and some other guy having coffee every other week, or a local salon, or something bigger. What I've discovered is that it's possible, for instance, to create your own intellectual institutions. You mentioned my co-founding a university, and yes, it is possible to do that. It's not going to be like other universities, but it is legally entirely possible to run a perfectly legitimate university out of a spare bedroom. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what guerrilla scholarship is. It's being creative, it's being audacious, and it's doing something that serves you and those around you.
Well, I like the sound of that. I'm curious about the name Gorilla. I
Uh-huh.
presume it's because you're a rogue scholar. Would you, in
Yeah.
that sense?
Yeah, you
Okay.
could say that. You could totally say that. The other reason I chose that word guerrilla is that, like the guerrilla fighter or the guerrilla revolutionary, they need the goodwill of the people around them, of the local community, in order to do what they do and survive. And by the same token, I place a great deal of emphasis on doing your scholarship in a way that um, does the same thing for your local community, whether it's participating in an adult education program or a book exchange or tutoring or producing a new something like that. You do something that basically, and I know this sounds terribly trite, but you want to make the world around you better, or at least your little corner of it.
Well, I like the sound of that as well, and it reminds me of I study um, ufology a little bit, spirituality. I came
Uh-huh.
across the work of Dr. John Mack, who passed away. He was a professor, and he was threatened by what he believed in the sense that he was going to lose his position. I believe he was at Harvard or Stanford. I'm trying to recall, but he was a psychologist, and so he and I. The reason why I think of him is because at a university, to me, idealistically, you should be allowed to voice an opinion, to
Hmm.
or even start a new part of your curriculum if you're a professor without the threat of losing your status, your stature, your position. And that was what was under threat for Dr. John Mack. He wanted to go into regression therapy
Hmm.
and this sort of thing and that way with psychology. So I think the reason why I think of that is guerrilla scholar being, and what you're talking about is intellectual freedom.
Yes. Hmm. Yeah, and that's exactly right. In fact, I have an entire chapter about taking those kinds of risks. And one of the examples is a professor that I had who was hired to teach Central Asian history and also do work on the Uzbek language, in which he was fluent. But he also had some other interests. He was very keen on aviation. And he ended up doing some very interesting work on the history of the Turkish Air Force, of all things. He also, ever since he was a kid, had been collecting what they call four-way views of aircraft. It's a picture of an airplane from three different angles, like from the side, the front, the bottom, whatever. And he had this huge collection, and he continued to work on that while he was a professor. Well, one of the things that turned me off to traditional academia after I graduated was they expect you to pick a lane and stay in it. And this guy wouldn't stay in his lane. And eventually, he was forced into early retirement over this. Now, it actually ended well for him because shortly after he retired or was forced to resign or retire, he was contacted by the Turkish government and and was told, "Hey, we're aware of your work. We're admirers of it. We're about to celebrate the gala celebration of the 100th anniversary of the Turkish Air Force. We would love to have you deliver a paper." And so he was there with all these, these important figures in that particular community. He was the only American in attendance, by the way. The other side was he ended up donating his collection of three-way views to the Aviation Museum in Seattle. And he later learned that after they had been through, I think it was like 117 loose leaf binders full of these things, they informed him that his collection was the most complete collection of its kind in the world. And it has become one of their most heavily used resources. So no, it wasn't Uzbek poetry, but it was still a hell of a contribution.
Celebrated. He is celebrated for
Hmm.
his natural abilities, and he searched for his intellectual freedom. He reached that,
Hmm.
and was successful, and that's the way
Yeah.
it should be. An article on your Substack titled "Creating Zones of Intelligence" posted last month. You said there are unmistakable signs that the suppression of unfavorable speech is deliberate. Why do you think free speech is so important
Uh-huh.
today? Why is it so important today in light of the rapid growth of AI?
There are a couple of things. First of all, I am finding, and this is just my observation and opinion, is that most of the speech that is being suppressed in favor of speech that has a very low truth content and a very low social utility and political value. And that is a problem. You suppress speech when your ideas can't meet their ideas in the forum of active public debate. So what that means is that we're being stuck with a lot of bad ideas, and that bothers me because right now we need good ideas more than ever, I think. Now, the uh, in the world of AI, uh, there are a number of things about AI that are a little bit worrisome. One of which is that I I fear that AI is going to homogenize our thinking. And what's going to end up happening is we're going to start seeing a sameness of answers to questions because AI is going to be likely to give stuff that we already have. It's drawing on old stuff, old material. Some of it's not so old, but it's all already been said. And what happens is it doesn't give us room for new ideas, truly new ideas. AI isn't going to come up with those. And we need a place for those kinds of ideas to surface and be picked up and looked over and kicked around and evaluated. And I'm just worried that what we're going to have is AI becoming something like an oracle, only it doesn't give you an oracle that makes you think or a riddle. It gives you a pat answer. And that worries me.
Well, I think what I'm trying to get at with the question is that, yeah, free speech to me, if we look at the global pandemic,
Uh-huh.
that's a classic example of speech being suppressed because people who spoke out against, say, vaccines, novel
Uh-huh.
vaccines were quieted or censored off of
Hmm.
social media. And so now the next coming, if you can call it a revolution or a huge society transformation with AI, the issues surrounding the safety of it, and
Uh,
is do you think, well, obviously free speech is important to
yeah.
discuss the issues
Hmm.
surrounding AI in regards to its safety and
Hmm.
how much of involvement its AI is going to have in our society, and, well, talking about regulation of AI so that it's slowed down, for example.
Yeah.
Do you find that free speech surrounding AI is at all being suppressed?
Um, I don't know that it's being actively suppressed so much as overwhelmed by hype. The people who are making certain arguments in favor of it tend to have very big megaphones. And other people who might have better ideas are limited to little more than a stage whisper. Uh, we're kind of in a weird bubble here. You've I'm sure heard of the term AI bubble being kicked around, and these kinds of phenomena come with a how should you put it, a reluctance uh, to pop that bubble, to claim that things are not what they seem, a certain amount of denial. And I see that as um, the biggest worry at the moment, that um, it's not just the hazards of AI per se, but it's the hazards of the business model. I mean, my God, OpenAI, yesterday I learned that its net loss for 2025 was $38.53 billion dollars. Um, that needs to be talked about. Is AI so expensive that we can't even use it?
Right. Well, in regards to OpenAI, on an interview with a former employee of OpenAI
Yes.
by on Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett was interviewing Daniel Catalio, who was a researcher with
Yeah.
OpenAI, but he left in protest due to a lack of safety with what AI is becoming. And
Hmm.
Daniel explains in his research paper, AI 2027, that there will be a significant loss of jobs uh, and a dramatic, transformation in society with the boon of AI, which are there's positives with AI, but there's also the negatives too with what
Yeah.
is coming. What this is my most important question of our interview, Sheldon. What
Uh-huh.
can young people do now to prepare for the new emerging AI dominated society?
There are some things that, as you said, that AI does really well, and there are some things that it does less well. AI as a kind of automation, those tasks that lend themselves to automation tend to be relatively simple, kind of tedious, and you have to do a whole hell of a lot of them for it to be of any value. And AI is great at that. However, as with other forms of automation, the work that's left over for the humans to do tends to be more difficult. So I think what that means is that the work that we're going to be left with when AI is finished is going to be the harder stuff, the stuff that requires a deeper intuition, an ability to deal with problems that have very fuzzy edges that don't necessarily respond well to quantification. And you hear talk of people in the AI industry saying we need more people in humanities. Well, I don't see any job applications or job listings. You know, we're looking for a humanities person. But leaving that aside, I think there's some truth to that. There are certain things that AI simply cannot do, and we need to identify what those are and then get good at them.
Well, I wonder if I'm thinking of the creative arts, for example, as perhaps
Excellent.
an area for young people to be thinking more of, or perhaps being a manager of AI agents,
Hmm.
the agents that AI, what they are, and being a manager of those. So it seems as an educator and teacher that the discussion around what's coming and how for young people to market themselves doesn't seem to be happening. However, I haven't been in every school, but it's just a feeling that I have that the conversations are not there in school,
Yeah.
I'm a relief teacher, so I go in and I help teachers who are sick and take over the
Oh,
class for a
okay.
short period of time,
Hmm.
a substitute, if you will.
Right. Hmm.
And so, this is recent that, and I have been asking or talking about AI a little bit here and there, and
Uh-huh.
it doesn't seem to be any concern. So perhaps the public is apathetic towards the doomsdayers, if you will. And I'm not a doomsdayer by any stretch. I just think that the conversation should be happening
Yeah.
about what's coming. What do you think?
Absolutely agree with you. And what worries me is that what I see happening in college is um, too often AI is simply being regarded as as a crutch, as a shortcut. I don't know if you heard about the big cheating scandal at Brown in this one economics class where it was like every student except one, I think, used AI to fill in the answers on a take-home test. And when they redid the test in class, the scores went from almost 100 to an average of like 46, you know. Um, and I think right now too many people are seeing AI as a way to kind of fake your way through, and that's dangerous. I don't want those people filling my prescriptions, you know.
Well,
Um,
it's one point I did bring up recently in a classroom about I think I used a quote or something, and are you interested? I was speaking to the students. Are you
uh,
interested in, in selling your intellectual agency? I mean, are you interested in, outsourcing this? Your own creativity, your intellectual ability, in other words, like, yeah,
hmm
using AI to do your work, in other words.
hmm
So there's that social issue, um, and that dilemma that's needed to be discussed, and I'm not sure that's really happening. Just
Yeah, I don't
keeping the
think it is
kids,
either.
yeah, keeping the kids honest about that. But the thing that I wonder, though, is back to the question: how can young people market themselves
hmm
with what's coming? Because I think, if this is rapidly growing. The growth of AI is
Oh yeah.
very, very rapid. It's almost exponential growth. I'm
hmm
pretty sure of that from what I've seen in research. And so we're talking like in the next 3 years, how society will
hmm
change. I'm predicting anyway,
Uh-huh.
and the takeover of certain jobs. And some, are talking about all the jobs, but who knows? But it is growing rapidly. So the issue of regulation and slowing it down
hmm
is, I think, is an important one to discuss. And yeah.
How do I market myself to someone uh, with a background like what I have, which is frankly kind of eccentric? An AI takes a look at my resume and says, "What the hell do I do with this guy?" and throws me in the circular file. Other question too is, what if there aren't enough jobs for people to do? And there's talk of a universal basic income, and I think that might be a good solution if it really is, um, enough to live on. Wouldn't it be nice if you had just enough that you didn't have to worry about rent or food or clothing or medical care? You had a little bit for entertainment, and you could take up painting or sculpture or poetry writing or making exotic furniture or whatever, something that isn't necessarily marketable but has value in and of itself. Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, I heard about that in that interview with on Diary of a CEO, that, the
hmm
idea of this universal income being doled out to make sure people could put food on the table
hmm
and pay their rent and that sort of thing. And working on those creative projects one would have, painting or writing or even public speaking, those things aren't going to go away. I can't see that at all.
No.
And
hmm
life is going to should be enriched, I'm hoping, with the advancement of AI. But I think it's
hmm
very important, this is my 2 cents, that regulation is important. You can't allow the likes of Sam Altman and Dario and Elon Musk
hmm
to have so much power and control. That's not what society is going to, stand for. And I think that's going back to
hmm
free speech and allowing
Yeah.
people. making sure that that's not suppressed, and conversations like the one we're having now is allowed and continued.
Yeah. Yeah.
My,
And therein lies a big part of the problem is that the people who are doing this are kind of vying with each other for some kind of master of the universe crown, or at least that's how it looks to me. And I don't want any of those people to have that kind of power. Hell, I wouldn't want Gandhi to have that kind of power,
I
you
don't
know.
think Gandhi would want that power.
No, he
So,
wouldn't. To his
right.
credit, you know.
On to the final question, just on the sake of time, Sheldon. Do you think society is ready for the superintelligence of AI? Why or why not?
Um, I do not think it's ready, but the reason why I don't think it's ready is because um, I believe that that true uh, general artificial intelligence, superintelligence, isn't going to happen. And because AI is very good at being rational, but it has never really demonstrated the ability to be intuitive. It doesn't have that. It can fake it kind of, but it really can't do it. And what the reason I say that society isn't ready for it is because if we get that super intelligence or something that calls itself a super intelligence, it's going to be something that frankly is a bit psychotic. People are going to confuse extreme capability with something that should be wisdom, but is not. And in that sense, I don't think we're ready for it because what we're going to get is going to be not a good thing.
I think you're touching on issues and values, and I would agree with you. And I think that it's important, right, uh, to scale it back, slow it
Yeah,
down, right?
definitely.
And we should be working on ourselves
Hmm.
and getting along with each other. Uh,
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful thing. AI it's exciting. Technology is exciting, and
Oh,
and it
yeah.
brings a lot of positives, but it can bring a lot of negatives. And so it's important to keep on with these healthy conversations. So
Hmm.
I appreciate you coming on the program today, Sheldon. I wanted to give you a moment to uh, let the public know how they can get a hold of you and carry on having conversations with you.
Well, the probably the best way is the Substack that you mentioned, the Guerrilla Scholar on Substack. I do also have a Facebook page that I post to occasionally. I am also on Blue Sky and LinkedIn, but most of what I do is on Substack. I just try to limit myself to one big forum. The other thing I would suggest is to pick up a copy of my book, which is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Thrift Books, and various other venues. It's available in hardcover, softcover, ebook, and audio.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you again for coming on the program. It truly has been enlightening.
Well, thank you, Jim. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you everyone for coming on to Life's Journeys and listening today. And please post a comment and share this episode with one person you think would benefit. And until our next episode, take care.